So I smoked a toad, and this is how it went. So Bufo Alvarius is a type of Sonoran Desert Toad that produces a toxin on its skin that is 5-MeO-I DMT, and it is an extremely hardcore hallucinogen. So one wild character decided one of these days that he was going to scrape the venom off the back of the toad, let it dry out in the sun, and then smoke it. That leads us to where we are now. So for her 40th birthday, my wife decided that she wanted to hop on a plane and go to the Amazon rainforest and do a week-long ayahuasca retreat. And as a part of that, on day 4, we do a lunchtime Bufo Alvarius. So I had done DMT before, but it was in a pen vape, and it was a very intense experience, and I will talk about that on a different time. But I was coming into this experience with some preconceived notions, and I was absolutely terrified. You see, there's a part right after you consume the Bufo alvarius where the smoke has entered your lungs and you are holding it, and things start to get a little wonky, and then all of a sudden, boom, you are ejected from your body. Now, this disembodied experience is extremely disorienting because you're kind of like an ethereal body floating in wherever you're at. And I thought the first time I did it that I had died. And so you could see how that could be a little concerning. So naturally, prior to this experience, I decided to go to the temple that they had on site and spend a little time meditating and having a discussion with whatever higher power was willing to listen. You see, I was begging for surrender. I didn't want to fight. The hardest part about it is that if you fight the experience, it can be really, really painful in the emotional and mental aspect of it. It's like just being tossed around in an ocean. So after about 30 minutes of meditation, the bell had rang for the Bufo ceremony, and we enter the smaller Bufo Maloka. Now, unlike the other Malokas, this one, there is only 3 beds in the center of the Maloka. So 3 people will be administered at a time. It is the kind of experience where after you take it, you are no longer capable of doing anything at all. You are in your body, but you couldn't walk or talk or any of that jazz. So they go ahead and grab the clipboard and tell everybody like what the procedure is going to be like, and then they call the first name. And lo and behold, it is I. So when I reach the mat, I am trembling. I am absolutely terrified. I sit down and I look at the administrator who is giving the medicine, and he is the kindest spirit you could imagine. And he looks at me and he goes, "How are you feeling?" And I said, "Nervous." And he said, "I would be nervous if you weren't nervous." And that actually made me feel surprisingly better. So after he heats up the flask, it fills with smoke. I'm sitting there and I just commit. I take the biggest drag that I possibly can and I just hold it in. And within a few seconds, I disappear. Now I'm going to go ahead and preface this with the concept that I do not have any sort of strong beliefs in a religious structure. I have looked into many of them. I was born and raised Catholic, but I've also spent time looking into Buddhism and other forms of religion. That being said, I immediately blasted into what I could only describe to you as the embrace of an almighty, all-knowing, divine entity. Now, at first, it was kind of scary because it was like a moth to a flame. I was just being held by this abundance of positive energy and light and everything you could imagine that is just positive and good in the world. And as any sort of negative, intrusive thoughts tried to come into the situation, into the space, it was just like immediately vaporized by this overwhelming power of goodness and joy. Now, in my mind, while I was in this experience, I just remember screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," over and over again inside of the experience when I was in my head. But outside, apparently, according to my wife, something very different was happening. So, according to my wife, I basically sat into a seated fetal position and rocked from my back to sitting position over and over again, saying, "Surrender, surrender, surrender." And then suddenly I stopped and I screamed with all of my might, "Nirvana!" Now, I think that is the first time I've ever heard myself using the word nirvana ever. But then it got even weirder because apparently I crossed my legs and I sat in a seated position. And for the remainder of this experience, I did very loud, steady, "Om." Now, the thing about this experience that's unlike ayahuasca is that when the experience is over, you just click right back to reality. And I just sat up, eyes wide open, and I see the facilitator there smiling at me. And he was the most beautiful human being I've ever seen in my entire life. And as I looked around at all these people that I'd become familiar with over this experience, they too were the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. And I started to realize, like, it's us. It's all us. Like, we are it. We are the thing. We are the other side of the mirror that exists in this reality. So after you're done, they take you back to your mat and you can get yourself a little bit better grounded. I was sitting near my wife and I actually watched one of the people who I had grown really fond of go through his experience. Now, this particular gentleman had reminded me a lot of my father, surprisingly enough. He was a very rough and rugged individual. He loved hunting and fishing and was a very independent person. And when he had his experience, his external reaction was very triggering to me. So he began to scream in rage. It was insane. It was kind of crazy how he just for 5-10 minutes till he was just so red in the face and his whole body was red and just yelling and screaming as loud as he could. And I couldn't help but just start bawling. I was just weeping because coming out of that experience, I could see that it was him just getting all of that pain and all of that anger blasted out of his body. And the best part happened right after that. The minute he snapped back to reality, he sat up and with a deep breath and a smile on his face, he said, "I wish I'd have done that 20 years ago." After the Bufo experience, I was riding pretty high on the hog. And the rest of the day was kind of like walking on a cloud. And I went into that night's ayahuasca ceremony feeling 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And once again, Mother Ayahuasca proved that she can humble you very quickly. So stick around for that one.